United States lawmaker says President Donald Trump is focused on ending what he describes as the slaughter of Christians in Nigeria. Congressman Riley Moore said recent U.S. airstrikes on terrorist enclaves in Sokoto State were carried out in coordination with the Nigerian government, not as a unilateral action. In a post on X, Moore stressed that the strikes were intended to help Nigeria secure its territory and stop repeated attacks on Christian communities. He noted that the airstrikes launched on Christmas Day targeted militants accused of attacking Christians during the festive season in previous years. Moore described the operation as a significant first step towards addressing insecurity and religious violence in Nigeria. For more of this, I am joined by a security expert, Salaudeen Hashim. You're welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, with reports of increased U.S. intelligence and surveillance flights over Sambisa Forest, how could this monitoring impact Nigeria's fight against banditry and ISIS-linked groups? And what are the potential risks of relying on foreign surveillance?
Yeah, I mean, after that first attack, we have seen some level of retreat by some of these criminal elements. Some of them have pushed back, and then, of course, running towards the border between Nigeria and Niger, which is actually one of the very big steps that we have been able to reduce attack. And then, of course, the constant recon by the U.S. Military unmanned aerial vehicle also suggests that there is also ongoing intelligence for some other follow-up kind of operations. And then, of course, that intelligence sharing between Nigeria and the U.S. government is producing some kind of results. One is that it has reduced some element of narration and narratives out there, suggesting some level of ethno-religious implication in the whole attack system, because those who initially pushed back have also changed their tone and have seen some level of positive light in this particular operation. And then, of course, to also let you know that terrorism and the counter-terrorism effort is actually a global effort, and we are very delighted to have seen some kind of cooperation coming in from the side of Nigeria. Currently, the Turuji group are already hiding some 25 kilometers away from the Niger border. And then, of course, even the other Turuji is also on the run. And this tells us very clearly that this particular first strike is also part of the weapon in counter-terrorism, sending fear, sending surprises, and then, of course, the unexpected might happen. So we have seen some element of reduction in mass movement in all of these locations, and this in itself is positive and has given the community some sort of respite. At least they will be able to breathe in the interim, not knowing what might befall all of these terrorist groups. So everybody is actually working in a very low rate. But one of the things that is very fundamental is that some of these groups are highly adaptive. They are highly adaptive. They have some social re-engineering efforts. A number of them work as community members in the daytime, and then, of course, as bandits at night. So they use the daytime to also gather intelligence, conversation going on within the community. They also gather them and use them as part of the operational plan. So I think our intelligence operators must also be very vigilant to also work very strongly to identify some of these informants, those who are in the community. Some KYC must also be put in place to be able to help us contain and prevent any further form of occurrences that might happen in these local areas.
All right, so the airstrike that happened in Sokoto on Christmas Day was received with a lot of mixed reactions coming from Nigerians, and some of it was actually fear as to how far the U.S. would go in their bid to end religious terrorism in Nigeria, quote unquote. Now, would you say that Nigerians are fully within those rights to feel this level of fear because of the airstrike that occurred on Christmas Day?
Absolutely. The fact is that once the issue of consent was procured, that there is going to be more of these kind of mutual operations. And then, of course, we expect that in the coming days, some level of additional recon that is currently ongoing might also happen in the Northeast. So there is already fear within those criminal territories that this might also come their ways. But I think there is nothing to fear within the side of civilians. And then, of course, Nigerians who are going about their regular business. Fear more is more palpable in the hands and the community or in the compound of those who are terrorists and those who have a specific base where they carry out their operations. You recall one of the very big gap that was actually seen in Sokoto was because of the very adaptive ways of these criminal gangs, because they don't have specific base in the northwest. They only use that as a launch pad to be able to get into other locations where operations carried out. But in the northeast, the stories will be different because you have from Camp Zero up until all the camps and sleeper cells areas where these guys operate, all the way to the Sahel, and then of course across the riverine area, and the channel within which they bring in all of their small arms and light weapons, and then of course the river bank that also help to transport arms into the other side of the divide. So all of these places are already known tracks. They are usually no-go area for our own local security area, operators. So we are hoping that this kind of airstrikes and operations might help to create additional level of entry points for more clearance, because once we're able to dislodge all of these bases and camps, then opportunities are there for most of our local groups who can now do boot on the ground and do ground entry into these areas, clear the locations and secure it for some other kind of additional level of operation. But what most important for me is that there must be some additional clearance operations that must be put on the ground. The operations must be better coordinated so that we don't see the element of debris that we find community members carrying around. That is also very risky. When communities begin to carry debris of airstrikes around, it is not safe, and it's against international human rights law for that to happen. So this must be done in a more cohesive and more human rights responsive manner as we move on into the next level of operations.
All right, so one area of concern coming from a lot of Nigerians is whether or not foreign-led airstrikes could risk undermining Nigeria's sovereignty or complicating its internal security operations. And would you say that Nigeria's security issues is now being highly politicized by a lot of foreign countries as it has become part of their own political debates?
Yeah, I mean, once consent is procured, there is no question of territorial integrity or kind of invasion. This was something that was mutually done. Finland, Somalia. In fact, recently, Mogadishu celebrated the U.S. effort after a very long time when the Somalian government recaptured most of the local areas. So we have seen this happen in Palestine, in Philippines, and in most countries. So Nigeria is not actually the first. The only concern that I have is actually with ECOWAS and from the base within which this particular operation was carried out, which is somewhere within the Gulf of Guinea, and then of course very close to Accra in Ghana. This also might have some level of challenge with the ECOWAS Defense and Security Protocol arrangement, which suggests that no country would attack or be used as a harbor to attack any other country. So the question that comes to mind would be, would the consent that Nigeria gave be able to reduce that level of a diplomatic row between Nigeria, ECOWAS, and Ghana? Would that protocol still stand or threaten as a result of the consent? So that is also another issue that we need to further interrogate. But most importantly is that consent was procured. And within the UN Charter, once you have consent, and the fight against terrorism is actually, no country can defeat it unilaterally. You need cooperation at regional level, at continental level, and then of course at international level. And of course for us as a country, we failed in a number of ways. We failed in our inability to be able to cut off the oxygen that provide funding and logistics to all of these groups. Our financial intelligence was not sufficient enough to be able to pick that. I think we failed in that regard. Two is that we failed in our inability to have allowed this particular operation to linger for over a decade. Despite all the effort that we have put in, there seemed to be a conflict merchant arrangement where people are smiling as a result of the revenue stream that is coming as a result of the counter-terrorism effort. There seems to also be some level of political economy that comes with the entire counter-terrorism effort. So we failed in those areas. And then, of course, we failed in the governance component because we also were not able to provide the non-kinetic component which the national security strategy has also proposed. Because if we have put in the non-kinetic infrastructure, opportunities are there that we will be able to have taken care of the structural root causes of the reasons why people get recruited in the first place. That we have failed. Now, the other area that we may fail in the coming days will be in the areas of recruitment of additional young people into terrorist groups. I saw a video of young people who were not taken into the force after going through some of the training, and unfortunately, those guys have come out to threaten that they are willing to be recruited into any bandit gang. That is a fear. Two is what are the digital approaches and the technology we have put in place to reduce online radicalization and reduce recruitment using most of our digital platforms. And most of these guys who use cash and display them on TikToks and all of these platforms are using them to also just use them as a bait to bring in young people. That is an area where we need to strengthen our intelligence. Digital intelligence in counter-terrorism is one of the modern approach to reduce all of these threats. But of course, again, we are not doing much more in that regard. And I'm very afraid that might be the case. And then, of course, most importantly, as we go into the new year with the new tax law, are these going to further threaten the economy of individuals? Would people begin to find some element of alternatives to survival? These are some of the clearinghouses that we need to find some responses and answers to. If this is the case, then we need to step up governance, step up some element of our counter-terrorism using the non-kinetic response. But again, I'm very delighted that we also have the Viper chopper, which also should be coming in. This targeted range Viper helicopter are meant to be able to help us respond in a more delicious way, as it were, to most of these terror groups. So that for me seems to be some level of respite, but internally, what are the structures and infrastructure we have? That for me will be some of the things that readily should be pointing in the head of most of our governance structure. Because in our 2026 budget, I didn't see anything that speaks in that regard, and that is a very big worry for me.
All right, that was security expert Salaudeen Hashim discussing the recent airstrike that took place in Sokoto on Christmas Day and the impact of these actions by the United States, and to also figure out the collaboration between the two nations, Nigeria and the United States.